This week, Alex will figure out a way to start getting Victoria's old mast cut down to the right diameter to become Arabella's mizzen mast. Victoria's main mast was 7 inches around, and Arabella's plans call for a 6-inch diameter for the mizzen. So Alex's first step in getting to that was to make a jig for the router so he could make a series of kerfs down the length of the mast. And then the plan is to come back and connect them with the power planer and hand planes.
All right, moment of truth. Well, so we're working on the mast here, and I made our little jig to take this down to a 6-inch stick from a 7-inch stick diameter, and we ran into a little snafu. So the jig worked great, and it would have been perfect if the stick were round. So we came through here and I made a test cut right down in here, and trying to see how that would work out, and it worked perfectly fine. I managed to get the router all the way around and it didn't give me any issues, but then I went and I checked it with the calipers and it is not perfectly round. So instead of transferring all those irregularities in the mast all the way down into the mast that we're going to use for our mizzen, it would be best to true this thing up, make sure that it is 6 inches around all the way down the mast, and do this properly. Since we have the opportunity to do that right now, we're going to try to do that. So the ideal situation would be to put this thing on a giant lathe, just put, connections on each point and rotate it and go down and make the same diameter all the way down. Now the problem with this is, 1, making a giant lathe, which is possible, but 2, since this stick is going to be, I'm guessing, probably around 30 feet long, just to give it a little bit extra, I think our mast is supposed to be 27 something, it's going to sag in the middle. And now everybody's gonna say, why don't you make steady rests for it? Well, the problem with that is if we put steady rests down it, those steady rests are just going to move the stick with those irregularities, because it's not round, it's got some wobble in it. So we're just going to transfer that right down through yet again. So I think Steve and I came up with an idea for truing this thing up, and that's what those supplies are for. So that's what I'm going to be working on today. What am I doing with this paper? And this doesn't need to be perfect for what I'm doing, but this is a good trick for anybody out there who needs to do something similar. All right, so kind of messed this up already a little bit, but we're working with what we got. Normally, what I would have done is put a hose clamp on here and follow the hose clamp, but that is one of the things I forgot to get at the store. Might be worth getting now, but let's see what we can do with this. I can test it on the mast and we can see how best to move forward. I gonna do with this? Take a decent amount of shimming, but it should work.
If you haven't figured out what's going on with these rings yet, it'll become clearer in a moment. But before going further, Steve and Alex needed to cut the mast to its approximate final length.
So, ready to lop it off. So I made a mark here, but I'm pretty sure we need to be more like in here somewhere. So, what I want to double check first is in the boat. The distance from the deck to the bottom, to the mast step.
Okay.
And that should be the distance below deck for what's marked on the plans. Because his only went like what, like a foot or so under the deck?
Yeah, something like that.
So,
Yeah, and then there's a tenon that's gonna drop like 2 inches into the oak.
oh, okay.
So we need that on the end of the mast.
That's good to know too. If we add 6 feet, we should have,
Way more than enough,
including the tenon.
including the tenon. You need plenty.
Okay,
You'll have inches left over.
so let's plan on 6 feet, which is gonna make that even longer.
So I think if we cut it at 32, would be fine.
Okay.
And then what does that leave us at the other end?
We are just under 11 feet.
Okay. So you said 11 feet?
Yeah, so it's less than 11. It's like a couple inches less.
So we could definitely get the mizzen gaff out of it.
Yeah.
Because that's
the
8'3". We could get the stay-cell support.
Yeah.
That's 10'0". And we are 4 inches shy of getting the main gaff out of it.
More than that. Because we're shy of 11.
We're shy of 11. Okay.
But we also said that that thing over there could work for the main gaff.
I think so. I mean, at first glance.
Yeah.
At first glance. It's got the diameter and it's got the length, and we can even trim a little length off of it. And the main is supposed to be a 7-inch mast, which is what Victoria's was. So her gaff hardware we can just put right on it.
Nice.
Which means all we have to do is manufacture a mizzen gaff hardware.
Yep.
Which will be cool. So yeah, that spar might just be able to lop a little bit off either end and remount it.
Cool.
If we use Victoria's boom as the main boom, we can cut that down, and that seems like it'll be fine at first glance. And then the gaffs we got covered. So I think we would just have to manufacture the main mast and the boom for the mizzen.
Yeah.
Which would be 13 feet and 2 1/8, 2 3/4 diameter at its biggest.
Which is
nothing. Like
Yeah.
that's like a fraction of one of those boards down there. Those boards down there are 2 inches thick. We literally glue 2 of them together and turn a spar out of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're on good track then.
Awesome. So I'd say somewhere in this little strip.
Okay.
Whatever works. And I'll just support over here so it doesn't come crashing down. And I think we're good to go.
Okie dokie.
Nervous.
Yeah. I hope we got this right.
All right, now that we have the spar cut, it's time to brace these tubes back on, and then we can move on to the next step, and we can explain to you guys what we are doing here. All right, so here we are. We've got our makeshift lathe all set up. So just to give you guys a little run through, we've got all these PVC pipes on the mast and basically centered as best as I could, which is pretty close. I think nothing was off by more than like a 16th or a 32nd, which isn't really going to matter for this. But we got that all done all the way down, and then all of these back supports over here are in a straight line. So essentially that means that we are running in one continuous circle just between these two posts. Because what I did is I made the back ones in a straight line, and then I pushed it so that these would keep it all straight. So technically the mast and the weight of the mast should keep rotating like this. And it's not gonna put in the irregularities because of the PVC piping, which is what we are actually running on now. So the next step is going to be to figure out cutting channels through here to get our diameter. So we've got the router here, which is going to have to sit up against the piece of wood. And basically I need to figure out a jig to hold this thing down on this board, which is now jointed to be at the same distance on each side here. And so if I can clamp this down to here, turn the router on, and then we can rotate the mast, we should be able to get a perfect ring cut around the mast. So the only thing is I need to figure out how to attach this router to probably this piece of wood, and then we will put it up against the mast. And the cool thing is at this point we have this little catch lever here, and if we open it up I can plunge in the router using this little adjustment over here. So I think that's what I'm going to work on now, is try to make something that is going to go on the end of here and attach to the board, and then we will likely just clamp it because it doesn't need to be perfect at this point, it just needs to be immobile. So let's get that done, and then I think we get to test this with Steve soon. All right, so I think we have the final rig here. The router is going to sit on this 2x4. It is held upright by this bracket here that is screwed into the sides on the end and then to the mounting right here. And it is set at a specific depth. When this is placed in between our two guides here, which on one side we have a square that is just clamped onto the board, which was jointed, which means that down the line where it hits all of our 2x4s that are holding the mast in place, it should be always at the same distance. And then on the other side, I just clasped some other piece of board that will just kind of sandwich it in there, and you can see that it slides right in there. There we go. So it slides right there. So we're going to start out like this, and then as we go, we can push it in with the cutter going, and then it'll rest on the rest right there. We can clamp this in place, and then we got these from the jacks, and I drilled some holes in here, and the other person, or if this goes well, it can be one person, can just rotate the mast like this. And so we're gonna go down and make kerfs all the way down, and then I will come back and take the power planer and take it down close to those kerfs, and then I'm gonna take probably a hand plane to clean it up and get that thing all smooth all the way down. So I'm gonna get Steve and we're gonna see if we can do our first test cut. Should be cool.
It seems circular, and it seems like we cleaned up a little bit on the second pass, but I don't feel like we took much off.
Yeah, no, you were taking stuff on the sides and didn't seem like a whole lot in the middle.
No. Oh. Oh.
A little big, but like maybe, what is that, like a 30-second?
Yeah, if that.
So. That looks pretty good to me.
Cool.
Yeah, and you can see like how thin it is here and how thick it is here.
Yeah.
Like it definitely,
It's a
we took
wonky
off
stick.
varying depths all the way around.
Yeah. Cool.
So I think that's proof of concept.
I think the next step will be to take a cut down there and double check that the thin stuff makes it all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seems to be going really, really well. All of the rings that I've cut seem to be really good. They're really close together. None of them have more of a discrepancy than like maybe a 1/16th, which down the entire mast isn't gonna make any difference whatsoever. And the wood underneath looks really, really good. Like there are no rot spots that I'm finding, even on the spots that didn't have the varnish on it anymore. Are looking really fantastic. So I'm gonna try to finish this up over here, and then we're gonna have to take all of these off, and I'm gonna have to connect all of these. Later today, we're gonna be meeting up with Anne and doing a little bit of a surprise thing for a Patreon revamp that we're doing. So I kinda gotta hurry up.
While Alex makes progress on the spars upstairs, Steve has been getting stock ready for what's coming up. This material will soon get installed as the bilge bands, and before too long he'll resume and finish planking the hull. And next week we'll get a look at the progress he's made on building the bulkheads. Last week, Steve told you about the new t-shirt campaign with an extra special Akiva design. It was too cold to model for you, but it warmed up, so here it is in action. Also a sneak peek at the mizzen mast progress. All the info on the t-shirt campaign and how you can pick one up yourself is in the description below. Thanks as always for watching and supporting the channel, and we'll see you again next week.